You were told your sensitivity is a superpower. They lied. For most, it's not a gift, it's a silent form of self-destruction. There is a reason why you feel exhausted, unseen, and perpetually drained, and it's not just burnout. Modern psychology and ancient mysticism both point to a chilling truth. Unconscious empathy is a trap. Today we're going deep into why your kindness has become your curse, and how to stop being the prey. To understand the empath curse, you must see that it's not just emotional sensitivity, it's a constant attunement to invisible layers of reality that most people ignore. You notice tensions in a room before a word is spoken. You sense small shifts in tone, pauses, subtle expressions. At first, it feels like insight, like a quiet intelligence. You adjust your behavior to maintain harmony, avoid conflict, and protect emotional balance. But slowly, boundaries begin to dissolve. You don't just notice emotions, you carry them. Someone's anxiety becomes yours. Someone's sadness lingers in your system long after the interaction ends. You assume these feelings belong to you, shaping your sense of self without realizing it. Over time, this creates subtle exhaustion. You wake up feeling heavy, drained after social interactions, confused by emotions that appear without cause. You define your worth by how much you can endure for others. You start believing your role is to absorb tension, hold space, and maintain emotional balance, even at your own expense. Even alone, your mind continues to process others' problems, their feelings, their needs, leaving almost no room for your own clarity, stillness, or emotional truth. Empathy becomes something quiet, persistent, and exhausting. Not a gift, but a drain, until you begin to see the difference between holding space for others and losing yourself in the process. If you look closely at your own behavior, a pattern begins to emerge. It doesn't appear all at once. It develops gradually, through repeated situations, similar emotional cycles, and outcomes that feel the same beneath the surface. You find yourself drawn to people who are complicated, emotionally heavy, those who need understanding more than they give. At first, it feels natural. You tell yourself it's connection, depth, meaningful relationships. But honestly, a deeper question forms. Why do you always end up giving more than you receive? This is no accident. According to Jungian psychology, the psyche organizes itself around unresolved internal material. What you are drawn to in others often reflects something unfinished within you. Subtly, unconsciously, you try to stabilize others while searching for your own stability. You invest energy into healing them while neglecting your own wounds. This feels like care, but beneath it, there is a search for resolution, for balance, for integration. And so the cycle repeats. You sense someone's pain, feel connected, invest, and for a moment it feels purposeful. But over time it drains you. Your efforts feel unrewarded. And instead of stepping back, you push harder, give more, explain more, become more accommodating, believing that eventually something will change. It doesn't. Because it was never only about them, it's about you. About the part of you that feels responsible for others' emotional outcomes, equates understanding with obligation, and seeks completion through external validation. The more you stay in this loop, the more your energy entangles with situations that don't belong to you. And your very strengths, your awareness, sensitivity, patience, reinforce the cycle. They allow you to endure, to understand, to tolerate what should be addressed, to justify what should be questioned. Not from ignorance, but from understanding too much. At a deeper level, you respond to an internal blueprint shaped by past experiences and emotional conditioning. It dictates what feels familiar, meaningful, magnetic. These dynamics draw you in, even when they drain or confuse you, because they resonate internally. Until you bring this structure into awareness, the cycle continues. Subtle, repetitive, draining, disguised as care, disguised as connection, while quietly pulling you away from yourself. But once you see it as a pattern rather than just reactions, clarity begins. You notice when care turns into overextension. You start distinguishing genuine connection from unconscious involvement. The question shifts from why them to why me. You begin to see what drives your engagement, what remains unresolved inside, and how empathy has been operating without full awareness. Only then can the cycle finally start to break. At the center of everything you've experienced, everything you've felt, and everything you've struggled to explain, there is a truth that changes how you see yourself completely. Empathy without awareness becomes self-abandonment. This is not an exaggeration. It is not a dramatic interpretation. It is a precise description of what happens when sensitivity operates without structure. Because real empathy was never meant to involve losing yourself. It was never meant to blur your identity or dissolve your inner stability. It was never meant to turn you into a container for the emotional weight of other people's lives. True empathy is a form of perception. It allows you to recognize what someone else is experiencing without confusing it with your own internal state. It gives you insight, not obligation. It creates understanding, not entanglement. But what most people call empathy is something else entirely. It is absorption. And absorption is where the damage begins. Because when you absorb instead of observe, you are not just connecting, you are merging. You are allowing external emotional states to enter your internal system without filtration, without questioning, without limits. At first, this feels natural. You interpret it as compassion, as emotional intelligence, as a deeper way of relating to others. You feel closer to people because you can sense what they feel without them needing to explain it. But there is a hidden cost to this way of being, a cost that accumulates quietly. Each time you take in what is not yours, your system becomes more overloaded. Your mind processes more than it was designed to hold. Your nervous system remains activated for longer periods of time. Your emotional clarity begins to weaken. And slowly, something essential begins to erode. Your sense of self. Because identity is not just built on what you think, it is built on what you consistently feel as your own. And when your internal space is constantly filled with external input, your ability to distinguish yourself from others begins to collapse. This is why so many empaths struggle with confusion. Not confusion about the world, but confusion about themselves. They know what others feel. They understand what others need. They can interpret complex emotional dynamics with remarkable precision. But when it comes to their own direction, their own desires, their own truth, there is uncertainty, because their awareness has been trained outward, not inward. This is where the concept described by Jung becomes critical. He spoke about unconscious identification, the process where the psyche merges with something outside of itself without realizing it. In this state, the boundary between self and other becomes unstable. You are no longer relating to emotions. You are becoming them. And when this happens repeatedly, your internal structure begins to fragment. You feel pulled in different directions. You feel emotionally inconsistent. You feel deeply connected, yet strangely empty at the same time. This is not a contradiction. It is the direct result of losing the center from which your experience is meant to be organized. Because without a clear center, everything affects you. A single interaction can shift your entire mood. A small change in someone's tone can alter your perception of reality. An unresolved emotion from someone else can linger in your system for hours, sometimes days. And over time, this creates a form of psychological instability that is difficult to define, but impossible to ignore. You become highly responsive, but not grounded. You become deeply aware, but not anchored. You become emotionally open, but not protected. This is why the solution is often misunderstood. Many people believe the answer is to care less. But that is not the answer. Suppressing your empathy does not create strength. It creates disconnection. It turns your sensitivity into something rigid, something closed, something unnatural. The real shift is not about reducing empathy. It is about transforming how it operates. You must move from absorption to awareness, from unconscious merging to conscious witnessing, from losing yourself in others to remaining present within yourself while engaging with them. This requires a fundamental change in how you relate to emotions. You begin to notice what you feel without immediately identifying with it. You question where certain emotional states are coming from, instead of assuming they are yours. You allow others to experience their own feelings without stepping in to carry them. This may feel uncomfortable at first, because part of you is conditioned to believe that distance equals indifference, that not taking on someone's pain means you are not truly caring. But that belief is part of the illusion, because real care does not require self-sacrifice. Real care requires clarity. It requires knowing where you end and where someone else begins. It requires understanding that you can support without absorbing, that you can be present without becoming overwhelmed, that you can feel without losing control. And when this shift begins to stabilize, something powerful happens. Your energy changes. You are no longer constantly drained by interactions. You are no longer carrying emotional weight that does not belong to you. Your mind becomes clearer, your reactions become more intentional, your presence becomes stronger. People still feel understood around you. But now, you are not losing yourself in the process. This is the difference between unconscious empathy and conscious empathy. One dissolves you, the other defines you. And once you experience that difference, even briefly, you begin to realize something that was never obvious before. Your sensitivity was never the problem. The problem was that no one taught you how to hold it without disappearing inside it. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when something inside you begins to question everything you've been doing. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels like a subtle realization that something is off. You might be alone after a normal conversation, yet your mind keeps replaying it, analyzing their tone, their words, their emotions, while completely overlooking your own. And then it lands, not as a clear thought, but as a weight. You are tired. Not physical tiredness, something deeper. The kind that builds over time, through constant giving, constant listening, constant presence for others while slowly disconnecting from yourself. When you look honestly, patterns begin to appear. Moments where you felt responsible for someone else's mood. Moments where you kept the peace at your own expense. Moments where you ignored your own signals because understanding them felt more important. It never felt like sacrifice. It felt natural. And that's why it's so hard to see. Because you weren't forcing it. You were following an instinct to care, to support, to connect. But over time, that instinct shaped a habit. You began prioritizing others automatically, not because they demanded it, but because you learned that this is who you are supposed to be. And slowly, this creates a constant inner state. You are always processing, always adjusting, always slightly on. Even alone, your mind stays focused on others, their problems, their emotions, what they need. And in all of that, there is almost no space left for you. This is where the realization deepens. It's not just that you feel drained, it's that this has been happening for a long time. You start to see how this pattern shaped your life, your relationships, your choices, even your sense of identity. And uncomfortable questions begin to surface. When was the last time you truly listened to yourself? When was the last time you chose without guilt? When was the last time your needs came first? These questions reveal something difficult to ignore. You understand others deeply, but rarely give yourself that same depth. At first, there is resistance. A part of you insists this is just your nature, that caring is who you are, that stepping back would mean losing something essential. But underneath that, another awareness begins to rise. A quiet, undeniable truth. This is costing you more than you admitted. Not in obvious ways, but in small, consistent drains. Emotional overload, unbalanced relationships, staying longer than you should. And perhaps the hardest realization, not everyone meets you at the depth you offer. Not everyone gives the same way. Not everyone carries the same awareness. This is not judgment, it is clarity. And with that clarity, something shifts. Because once you see the pattern, you can't fully unsee it. You begin noticing it in real time, when something drains you, when you take on what isn't yours, when you ignore your own needs to maintain connection. Even if nothing changes immediately, awareness creates distance. A small space between impulse and action, and within that space, something new appears. Choice. For the first time, you are not just reacting, you are seeing, and that alone begins to change everything. Breaking the empath curse does not require you to become distant or indifferent. It requires something far more subtle. You must learn to observe without merging, to feel without absorbing, to care without carrying, to be present without losing your center. This is a shift in awareness. It begins when you notice what you are taking in. It deepens when you allow others to hold their own emotional weight. It stabilizes when you stop defining yourself through sacrifice. This is not selfish. This is alignment. Because when you are grounded within yourself, your empathy becomes cleaner. It no longer distorts reality. It no longer drains your energy. You become someone who can truly support others without disappearing in the process. And that is real power. There is nothing wrong with being an empath. The problem was never your sensitivity. The problem was losing yourself inside it. You were never meant to carry the world. You were never meant to fix everyone. You were never meant to disappear in order to be loved. True empathy does not consume you, it reveals you. And when you finally understand this, when you stop turning your compassion against yourself, something shifts. You are still open, but no longer fragile. You are still kind, but no longer depleted. You are still connected, but finally whole. And in that wholeness, there is a quiet, unshakable truth. You can care deeply without losing who you are,